Time starts now.
War leads to death, disability, disease, and displacement of the population. War increases poverty. War reduces growth potential by destroying infrastructure and financial and human capital. War diverts people towards violence, rent-seeking, and corruption. War in one country harms neighboring countries. A diplomatic approach is more efficient and economically beneficial than military power. This is why my partner and I affirmed the resolution, on balance, diplomacy has better maintained peace than military power. Our first contention is diplomacy is more economically beneficial. First, we need to look at economic ties. Most war-torn places tend to be those with fewer trade alliances. For example, the Second Congo War, the deadliest war since World War II, which killed 4 million people and involved 8 African nations with few trade ties. After World War II in 1950, interstate war has decreased due to increase in international trade networks, according to Matthew Jackson. Second, war brings debt, inflation, and higher taxes, according to Michael Shank. During World War II, which was financed through more debt and higher taxes, the gross debt was over 120% of the GDP, and the tax revenue increased by 3 times that much. According to the NPR, after World War I, Germany was in deep debt. The central government printed an overload of money, leading to inflation and the rise of the Nazi Party, which led to World War II. And the resulting inflation destabilizes the private economy, increases uncertainty, and slows economic growth, according to Romina Bacchia. A higher risk of a country falling into civil conflict, and it provokes political upheaval, social unrest, and conflict. For example, the Great Depression and the current Middle East war. Also, poverty and economic stagnation lead people to be marginalized. Little hope of employment or even a decent standard of living turn to violent activities, according to Dominic Strauss-Kahn. To stop inflation, debt from promoting an unstable economy and conflict, a diplomatic approach should be used. Diplomacy doesn't have these economic issues. Our second contention is diplomacy is more efficient. According to the Cuban Missile Crisis, America and the USSR were threatening to nuke each other. Instead of actually doing so, they reached a diplomatic approach and both sides removed their missiles. Public diplomacy helps bring countries together. On 9/11, terrorist attack in New York City and the Pentagon, public diplomacy has attracted and increased attention from all over the world. Families who lost loved ones from 9/11 or the Holocaust banded together to prevent this from happening in the future, according to Terry Green. Another example would be Pope Francis' visit to the U.S. In order to have peace from public diplomacy, there must be a clear communication strategy adopted, according to Amit Dashgupta. Instead of shedding blood through war, why can't we unite ourselves with mutual trust and understanding to achieve longer-lasting peace? If you were president, would you rather have your country fall into a depression and millions of your citizens dead, or sign a treaty and solidify alliances to prevent this from happening? In order to maintain long-lasting peace, there needs to be a strong, stable economy and efficiency. This is why my partner and I affirmed the resolution, on balance, diplomacy has better maintained peace than military power. Thank you.
Cross-text?
Oh, yeah.
You ready, Droopy?
Yeah.
Cross-text starts now.
Is everyone ready?
We're ready.
So, you said that diplomacy brings countries together, right? Yeah. So when America bombed Japan, they're still in peace today, right? How does America bombing Japan have to lead to in peace today? So you said it's only diplomacy that can lead to peace, right? But
Unbalanced.
Yeah, but since they bombed Japan, then we haven't really had any war with them.
Wait, I'm kind of confused what you're asking here.
So, like, you said that diplomacy brings in peace, right?
Well, on balance, yes.
So, do you agree that military force also brings peace? Because when America bombed Japan, there's still peace.
Well,
with
that's
them today.
probably one case. It's not the majority. We're talking about on balance, and diplomacy brings peace more often.
But you still agree that's true, right?
Yeah, because we're looking at on balance, and that may be one case, but not the majority of cases. We're looking towards the majority.
So what if diplomatic approaches don't work? What are you going to do then?
Because if you try public diplomacy, then that's basically bringing countries together against a common cause. So if you convince countries to help you, then wouldn't that be better than just going to war and killing millions?
That's not what I asked. I asked, what if diplomatic approaches don't work? Like, Trump asked North Korea to negotiate, but they were bent upon dropping a nuclear bomb. They didn't want to sit down and talk.
Yeah, so shouldn't you ask other countries to help you and try to convince them not to do it using public diplomacy?
But what if that doesn't work?
No, public diplomacy is basically...
Khan, present.
Partner ready?
Mm-hmm.
Opponents ready?
Yeah.
Judge ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Time starts now. We've all heard about North Korea and U.S. relationships. Trump saying it's a waste of time talking to them and how it hasn't worked for the past 25 years. And he's right. Our attempts to talk diplomatically with North Korea and find a solution haven't been working. They continue to ignore us and continue to make bombs. The whole world is in danger now. So is diplomacy really helping keep the peace? Today, me and my partner are here to prove why. On balance, military power is better at keeping peace as 1, it makes it so your opponent cannot ignore your point. 2, makes leaders more considerate. And 3, strengthens our relationship with other countries. My first claim is that it makes it so your opponent can't ignore your point. During World War II, Hitler was one of the major players. He was part of the Axis power, and his goals were to kill off all the Jews and expand Germany. He would not listen to anything diplomatic despite all of Europe's attempts, because he had his mind set on his goals. Eventually, the Allies had to step up and stop him before he killed off all the Jews and expanded Germany much larger than it would have been today. Another example of leaders ignoring diplomacy is North Korea. As I mentioned before, they've been ignoring the rest of the world for the past 25 years. Even though they've signed multiple treaties like the International Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and North Korea and U.S. agreement to freeze North Korea's nuclear bomb production. So with diplomacy, people can just ignore it and not face any consequences. Why should they listen? My second claim is that it makes leaders more considerate. Before, if there was a cause for war, there would most likely be a war. But with the invention of nuclear weapons, this has changed. So many countries now have nuclear weapons that there are roughly around 15,000 in the world today. Many are more powerful than those dropped on Japan. So that means even 100 of these nukes dropped out of the 15,000 could cause the world to end. Not only would it destroy the ozone layer and black out the sky, the radiation and explosions themselves would wipe out most life. And if you don't believe me that this helps keep peace, take, for example, India and Pakistan. They've had 3 wars in the past, but now they've signed multiple treaties saying that they will not use all these dangerous things like chemical weapons and to not attack each other's nuclear bases as they know the dangers of doing so. My third and final claim is that military force helps strengthen our relationship with other countries. If you didn't know, France is an ally of the U.S. But you know how this all started? In 1778, the French aided the U.S. in its fight for freedom. And our relationship is still strong today. The U.S. Department of State says the U.S. and France work closely on many issues, most notably combating terrorism, efforts to stem the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and on regional problems. Australia and U.S. relations, South Korea-U.S. relations are also great examples of alliances started by military actions. And they don't have to be just one country with another. It can be a whole group of countries. Nato, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was made to provide security to European countries. It has since 1941, and the Department of State's Office of Historians says it remains the largest peacetime military treaty in the world. So not only has it lasted for over 60 years, it is also the largest and most effective peacetime military treaty in the world today. To conclude, for these 3 reasons, this is why me and my partner strongly urge you to vote for a con ballot. As 1, it makes it so your opponent can't ignore your point. 2, makes leaders more considerate. And 3, helps strengthen our relationship with other countries. Thank you.
Cross section, do you want to cut?
Can we have?
I'll just want to run it.
All right. Yeah, that's the point of nuclear weapons.
Alright.
We're good.
15 seconds.
Wait,
It's first.
first.
It's first. First pro, first time. Once,
Oh
cross
wait, then can we actually have a little bit more prep time?
Sure.
I know.
Okay. Nukes are bad. So
Okay.
nukes are a form of hard power. Nukes are bad.
30 seconds.
That's where they constitute themselves.
Cross-examination starts now.
So you know nukes are a type of hard power, right?
Correct.
And also you say that NATO, people sign NATO so like no nukes can blow up the world and stuff.
No, NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It was made to
Exactly.
protect-
So is
it was-
NATO a treaty, right? So
it
isn't
was
that a
made to
diplomatic approach?
It was made to protect
No,
Europe. It is
I'm
for
sorry.
military actions.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a diplomatic option to protect military options from happening, right?
No, it's using military military actions to prevent.
But
keep
isn't
the
it
peace.
treaty?
It's in the name, but it's
So
based
if
on
it's-
military actions. It's not words. It's them actually going there and using their military force to help protect their countries.
So isn't NATO a treaty signed to not allow other people to nuke people, right?
No, it was to protect Europe. It was to protect Europe
Okay.
after World War
Moving
II.
on. So you know your point about Hitler.
Yeah.
Well, did you know World War II wouldn't have started if someone used a diplomatic approach before World War One?
They tried before World War One.
Yeah, because wait, did you know?
Hitler was part of World War II.
I know, but did you know World War II wouldn't have happened? Hitler wouldn't rise to power if a diplomatic approach was used before World War One.
World War One and World War II had a block of 20 years in between. I don't see how they related.
Wait, but did you know? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. And also, can you like explain what? Okay, never mind. So when you said that North Korea wouldn't listen to the world,
Yeah.
and
what's
also
the
when you said that it's going to strengthen relations, right?
That's my.
Well,
third
don't
thing,
you know
yes.
that's a type of public diplomacy?
No, because it was based on military
Do you
action.
know what public diplomacy is?
Would you like to explain?
It's basically, okay. So then also, do you know,
Time.
We have a minute of prep.
You sure can. Is it hot here?
Okay, we're ready.
That's a minute.
Okay, is everyone ready? Partner?
Yep.
Opponents? Judge?
Yep.
Okay, so my time starts now. So, in my opponent's first contention, they say that diplomacy benefits the economy. They are wrong because saving lives is more important than money. Everyone can agree to that. The U.S. wrote its constitution on saving lives. That is the main goal of any country. They want to help their people, not worry about their money. Would you really want to sit back and talk to a leader of another country or like a terrorist group while you watch your country get bombed? Why, in times of desperate need, would you want to try and talk to them while your people are getting killed because their country is bombing you over and over again? You need to fight back. You can't just watch that happen. You can't watch your people die for no reason. Also, in my opponent's second contention, they say that diplomacy is efficient. I didn't hear any sources that they used, and they also used the Holocaust as an example. No diplomatic treaty stopped that. What stopped it was that the U.S. and the Allies fought for the Jewish people's lives, and not just the Jewish people. Every other person who was disabled or anyone Hitler wanted to wipe out, their lives were saved because the U.S. and the Allies used military force. Again, we're going back to the saving lives thing. Also, in my opponent's third contention, they say that it diverts people towards violence. This is wrong because using nuclear weapons, people are less inclined to go to war because of the devastating effects. Why do you think Trump is not already starting a war with North Korea? Because he knows that if they drop the bomb, a lot of Americans are going to die, and he doesn't want that to happen. And again, this is all going back to saving lives, because every leader cares for the people and of their country. So everything goes back to saving lives. And this is why you should vote for the con team. Thank you. Yeah.
Cross-section, would you like some cut?
Sure. This.
That's yours.
people lives during depression.
Wait, 1 second. I'm ready.
6 minutes.
Opponents ready?
I let you know. Cross-sex is when the judge just says go.
Okay.
Okay? I'm not saying go yet. I gotta get my act together. All right, cross-sex starts now.
Okay, so you talk about how about saving lives multiple times. Wouldn't it save lives to just not go to war?
Yeah, but what if a country is in desperate need and people are dying every day? What if diplomatic treaties don't work? What are you going to do then? You can't just sit back.
Can you please give me an example?
I don't have an example, but theoretically, if that were to happen, you can't just you can't just sit back and watch. You need to fight back.
So this has never happened before.
No, but there are chances of it happening in the future.
Okay, so then you talked about how no treaty stopped World War II, but what me and my partner were trying to get to was that the reason World War I was started and then the World War II was started because of World War I was because instead of talking, Serbia and Austria just decided to declare war on each other.
Okay, and also, I actually do have an example of what I said before, ISIS. ISIS is bombing people in the Middle East, and right now there are U.S. troops in the Middle East fighting for their lives.
But is it working?
Yeah, it is.
So we're stopping ISIS with troops on the ground.
We're not stopping it, but we're saving people's lives.
Wouldn't it be more efficient to stop terrorist groups by using diplomacy, using public diplomacy?
But we haven't tried that, right? Because it doesn't work. We know it won't work. Like I said before,
How do we know it won't work if we haven't tried it?
Because why would you want to talk to someone while people are being killed? You need to fight back. You can't.
Yeah, we're talking to the countries where people are getting killed, such as Pakistan, Afghanistan, Syria.
But they don't care. That's not. They have.
Are you saying that these governments don't care that ISIS is killing their citizens?
No, I'm saying ISIS doesn't care about whatever treaties.
Yes,
we
but
want
public
to make.
diplomacy isn't talking with ISIS.
Time. Attack. Prep.
Yes.
Time starts now.
Okay, so in your first contention, you talked about how with military power, people can't ignore your point, and with diplomacy, people can just brush it off. But what about what happened with Cuba? The trade sanctions on Cuba completely crippled their economy to nearly zero. Cuba could not have gone on if the sanctions had not been lifted. Also, you talked about how Hitler ignored diplomacy, and then this caused suffering of the Jews. What we were trying to get to was the fact that the reason World War I started was because somebody from Austria shot the next in line to be the king of Serbia. If this hadn't just turned into an endless bloodshed and people had actually just started talking and said, oh, this was not an assassination attempt, this was just a random guy with a gun, then the entirety of World War I would not have happened. This just started with people just declaring war without even questioning what was going on. And then bigger countries started coming in, such as Russia and Germany. And the only reason Hitler came to power was because he was able to persuade his people using the example of World War I. He blamed the U.S. and the Jews on World War I. But if World War I hadn't happened, who would he have blamed? No one, because there was no blame to place. Also, you used nukes as an example. Are you saying nukes are a good thing, Are you saying something that can destroy the world 8 times over is a wonderful thing that everyone should have? And you talked about how India and Pakistan signed a treaty because of their nukes, but a treaty is a form of diplomacy, not hard power. Aren't you you're going against yourself? Also, you talked about NATO. NATO was formed due to a treaty. NATO was formed not because countries fought each other and were strengthened. It was formed because countries talked in a civilized manner. And Judge, for all these reasons, their argument is not valid, and I urge you to vote a con ballot.
I'm so sad.
Okay, so are you aware what NATO is used for?
NATO is used for the protection of European nations.
Exactly. So they use military force to protect them, correct?
Yes, but when
Not
we're-
I'm asking, not diplomacy, correct?
correct.
Okay.
But NATO would not have been formed, and thus military power would not have been used if not for diplomacy.
But it's they're using military actions with
Yes.
NATO. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. And you said that we said that nukes are bad thing. That we're saying that, or you said that nukes are a bad thing, right?
I say that nukes are definitely a bad thing.
Yes, and we agree. We said that it keeps the peace because all the leaders of the world, all the countries on a nuke, they know that nukes are bad, correct?
So should we be using nukes as just something to hold the world together? Should
Isn't
only
that what
nukes
it's
be
being
used?
used? Isn't that what it's being used for right now?
What happens if North Korea nukes us first? What happens if Kim Jong-un gets desperate and decides to shoot off a nuke into, let's
So
say,
we're going on to
Guam?
Okay, this is my cross-ax, first of all. You are not asking me questions.
Okay.
And also, that's an if. There's so many ifs I could ask you. So should I just...
Yes, it's also an if that peace will hold.
Yeah, but there are also examples in history, aren't there, that nukes have stopped a war, like the Cold War, correct?
The Cold War was stopped due to treaties signed by both the U.S. and Russia to
But
take
they did
away
not
the
attack
missiles.
each other because they each
Because
had nukes,
of-
and they were afraid of attacking each other with nukes because they knew the consequences, correct?
Yes, but the war was
Okay, thank
stopped
you.
due to
And so you agree with me that it was used?
No,
The
I
nukes were-
missaid. I was going to say it was due to political. They talked it out, and both of them agreed we're going to get these missiles out of here.
Okay.
Time starts now.
Okay, so first off, Judge, I will say that our value right now is what's going to benefit for the country, so efficiency. And also when they said that, like, for our first contention, that saving lives is more important than money, and we should help people rather than save money. But how can you help your people if your whole entire country is in a depression and you don't have money to support for them? And your whole entire country is devastated by the war that you tried to fight. And also, when they said that we should fight back at all costs, well, how can we fight back if we don't have the resources to fight back with? And if we fight back, we're going to be led into a deeper debt. And also, when they said about our second contention about the Holocaust and they fought for their lives, for the Jews and stuff, well, they're misinterpreting what we were saying. We're saying that the people who lost family members from the Holocaust and 9/11, they banded together, public diplomacy happened, and they banded together to prevent this from happening in the future. Also, they talked about our third contention, which diverts people towards violence. Well, we didn't have a third contention, and people will be directed towards violence because they have no more money because of economics. And also, during cross-sex, the second con speaker says that lots of ifs towards us, and then the first con speaker said that we shouldn't say those ifs, so that's kind of contradicting themselves. And they didn't really touch up on other points, so I'll say why our side is more efficient, because in order to be efficient, you need to have money to be able to fight these wars. If they want to fight these wars, you need to have money. And yeah, thank you.
For these reasons,
For these reasons, please vote pro ballot. Thank you.
Prep, ladies?
We don't need it.
You sure?
Do you need any further summarization?
You ready to go?
And how much prep do we have left?
How about a minute 15? Yes.
Okay, time starts now. So our first claim was that with military power, your opponents cannot ignore you, and that still holds true because right now with diplomacy, leaders are still ignoring us all over the world. For instance, North Korea, he's not listening to anything diplomatic from any country. Our second and third claim the claims themselves weren't even attacked by our opponent. They only tried to attack our examples and like how nukes are dangerous, and actually that leads to their side because what if we use them? But because they are dangerous, that is why leaders are more considerate. Why they are willing to not have a war and trying to find a solution without having to use anything military. And our third claim, which is that helped strengthen our relationships, wasn't touched by them at all either. They said they tried to attack our NATO thing by saying it is a treaty, and while it uses military actions to help defend them. That treaty was made so that they could use military actions to help defend Europe against terrorist groups like ISIS. And in fact, it's helping right now because ISIS in 2005 had about 30,000 square miles of land, and now they have around 20,000 square miles of land. And this is why all three of our claims still stand and why you should vote a con ballot. Thank you.
How much prep time do we have left?
About a minute 10.
All right. Go. Partner ready?
Yeah.
Opponents ready?
Yes.
Okay, judge ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to start by first telling you our values again. We are valuing the economy. We are valuing the economy of both the country that would be defending and the country that would be attacking. We are also valuing lives. We are valuing the lives of the people who would have to fight this war. So, they talked about how their entire speech was pretty much untouched by us. But that is just not true, Judge. First of all, in their first contention about how they cannot ignore the point and how a lot of people ignore diplomacy, such as North Korea, they've only stated one example. And they said from any country. What about China? 50% of North Korea's things that are imported into North Korea are from China. If China decided to put pressure on trade, then North Korea cannot function as a country. In their second example, they talked about how the use of nukes will create peace. Do you want to rely the entire world, the destruction or protection of the world, on just nukes? That is completely unreliable. We do not know the effects of nukes since they have only been used once, or actually twice, but both in Japan. Nukes have gotten more and more powerful, and if one country were to detonate a nuke, then the entire war would be thrown into an apocalypse. And in their third contention, they talk about how it will strengthen relationships. Judge, this is just not worth it. Would you send millions of people to die just so that you can strengthen relationships, just to fight more wars? No. And they have not touched upon any of our contentions. They have not touched upon our economic benefits, and such as wars bringing in debt and taxes increasing, as well as inflation. They have not talked about the fact that using diplomacy is more efficient than war. And another example, and for all these reasons, I urge you to vote a con ballot.
Okay.
Could we use the remaining of our?
Of course.
Okay. Is everyone ready? Partner, opponents, judge. Okay, my time will start now. To conclude, our impact of maintaining peace using military action is stronger, more efficient, and faster than our opponents' impact of maintaining peace by diplomacy. Because your enemies cannot ignore you, leaders become more considerate, leaders around the world, and our relationships with other countries strengthen.
My opponents say that the economy benefits, but they don't think about the lives that are being lost. They also say that the Holocaust was stopped. But the Holocaust was not stopped by a treaty, so they're contradicting themselves, saying that a treaty stopped the Holocaust when it didn't actually. This is wrong because lives are more important, and that's why we're stressing on it a lot. No lives equals no economy. And countries have come back from more devastating effects. So that just proves that money can be returned, but lives cannot. And also, they said that relationships with other countries strengthening is a bad thing. But that's not true, because when you form allies with other countries, they help you in times of need. And they also said that that just happens so we can fight more wars. But that's not true. Why would anyone want to fight more wars? All we're saying is that war could probably save more lives. This is not a game for us to keep fighting wars. Since lost lives cannot be returned, and that's all that matters, we strongly urge you to vote for the con team. Thank you.